Welcome back, viewers. Today, the video that I will be sharing with you is the part 2 video of the IELTS Writing Module Academic Writing Task 1, which is for process diagrams. And the part 1 video was the planning process, and the part 2 video we will be talking about the writing process of Task 1, particularly for process diagrams. So I am your tutor, Tahmid Alamgir from Lekhapora Online, and let's get on with the video. Before moving on to the video, I would like to advise you that if you haven't watched part 1 video for process diagrams, I would recommend that you go watch that one first and then come back to the video, as this video will have a couple of elements relating to the previous video. So with that, let's get on. So firstly, this video is going to talk about the second step, which is the writing process. So when you have done your planning and you have made the notes about the topic and the details of the diagram, you will now have to write the essay. And you will notice that once you have a plan and once you have brainstormed all the ideas, the writing process is going to be very easy. So you should take about 12 minutes to write your essay, and the writing process should be divided into 2 parts: the introduction and the body of the essay. So writing the introduction. So the introduction is going to have 2 elements, which is the topic sentence and a general statement. I will be explaining both of these elements in the upcoming slides in greater details. So the introduction will tell the examiner the topic of your essay. So by reading the introduction, the examiner will have to understand whether you could identify the graphic type and whether you could identify the topic of the graph. So your essay will be about a diagram, and in part 1 video, if you can remember, we noted down the topic of the diagram and the relevant details of the diagram. So now, using those notes, we are going to turn it into sentences and write the introduction of our essay. So first, we will be writing the topic sentence. So what is a topic sentence? So topic sentence is the first sentence of the introduction. So it's going to be a sentence that tells what the diagram is about, what typically the diagram is showing. And you should avoid copying direct sentences or phrases from the title of the diagram or from the task instruction of the diagram. You should use synonyms, and we're going to show you a couple of examples of how you should write a topic sentence. So let's take a look at this example, the raising production example, if you can remember from our previous video. So here is the title and here is the description, which is going to tell us what the diagram is about. So now we can come up with this topic sentence, which is as shown here, that the diagram presents the steps for making raisins from grapes. So what this topic sentence tells us is that it gives us an idea. Just this one sentence tells us what the whole diagram is about. It gives us an idea of the whole diagram and what the diagram is talking about. So the diagram shows the steps for making raisins from grapes. So this is what the topic sentence has written. And if you can see, we have avoided copying exact phrases and sentences from the instruction, and we have changed words. For example, making instead of producing. We didn't use producing, we used making. And these are certain synonyms that you can use in order to avoid copying direct words from the instruction. And I must tell you this, that if you do write exact words or exact similar phrases from the instruction, your marks will be deducted, because in that way the examiner is not testing your skill, because you're copying it from the instruction. So you have to use proper grammatical skill and paraphrasing skill. Let's take a look at another example, the Tafsville Public Library example. So here the topic sentence is as follows: the diagram illustrates the changes that were made to the Tafsville Public Library. So this sentence alone tells us what the diagram is about. It is about a library, a public library, with the name of the library obviously, the Tafsville Public Library, and it shows the changes that were made to this library. So here we know that this process diagram is about changes, and the previous one, it was about steps of a particular process. Also, in this particular topic sentence, if you notice properly, you will see that we did not use any words or phrases directly from the instruction. Let's take a look at the cotton cloth production example. And here the topic sentence is as follows. The diagram presents the steps for making clothes from unprocessed cotton. So this gives you the idea and the topic of the diagram and what the diagram is about. And again, it avoids copying direct words and phrases from the instruction and the title, and we have paraphrased the topic sentence. So here we have an activity for you. In Lekhapora Online, we emphasize self-practice, and that's why we try to incorporate such practices in each video so that our viewers, you guys, can try to solve them orally or just mentally, and this actually sharpens your English grammatical skills. So here, what I want you guys to do is, here we have a couple of words, as you can see, show, produce, process, and there are some synonyms for each of these words. So I want you to pick a synonym that fits each of these words and mention it in the, so it's like a fill in the blank, and you can do it mentally. So for example, I'll do the first one for you. So here it's show. So what can be a synonym for show? It can be illustrate. So in this way, it's going to sharpen your synonym skill and your synonym, how do I say it, your synonym reservoir basically, and it's going to help, and such skills are going to greatly help you in the exam, because in the exam you have to come up with synonyms on the spot. So if you practice such activities, it's going to actually help you. So you can pause the video and you can finish all of the words and then move on. Here we have another activity for you guys to do, where I want you guys to rewrite each of the sentences with the synonym for the underlined words. So for example, I'll do the first one orally for you. So the diagram shows a housing site before and after construction. So you have to basically find a word, a synonym word for before, which can, for example, be prior or previous, and after, which can be, for example, preceding. So the diagram shows a housing site prior to and preceding to the construction. Prior and preceding to construction. So in this way, you guys have to basically rewrite the sentences with synonyms of the underlined words, and these will actually sharpen your skills basically. So now, once we have written the first statement, we're going to move on to the general statement. So previously we wrote the first statement or the topic sentence, and here we are going to write a general statement. So what is a general statement? So the topic sentence tells what the diagram is about, and in the next sentence we are going to incorporate a general statement which will summarize what we will be talking about in the body. So the general statement is going to give the examiner an idea of what you will be saying about the diagram. So what are you exactly going to be describing about the diagram? So that's what a general statement is going to consist of. So if the diagram, for example, shows a process, where remember, so as I have already mentioned, two types of process diagrams. One is going to show you the steps of a process, and the other one is going to show you changes to a particular place. So if a diagram shows a process, then you have to mention how the process begins and how it ends. So for example, a typical general statement may be, it takes a number of steps to go from an apple on a tree to applesauce we can buy in a store. So what this tells you is that the process, the different steps, is about an apple from a tree being processed into an applesauce that is sold in a marketplace. So that's what a general statement serves basically. It serves the purpose of giving the examiner an idea of what you're going to talk about the diagram. So then let's look at another example for the other type of process diagram. So if there is a pair of diagram showing changes in a place, then you have to mention the overall effect of the changes. So the other type of process diagram is going to consist of changes to a particular place with a past snapshot and a present or an after snapshot. So for that one, you're going to have to talk about the overall effect. So a typical example may be the neighborhood was much busier following the construction of the bridge. So here, with the general statement, reading the general statement, you can understand that a bridge was made, and the after effect or the overall effect of the making of the bridge was that the neighborhood became much busier. So that's what the general statement's purpose is. So we can take a look at a couple of examples for our raisin production example. So the general statement here says that it takes several steps to produce raisins ready for commercial use from grapes growing in trees. So it's very detailed and elaborate, and it tells you what you're going to talk about the graph. So you're going to talk about the process of producing raisins ready for commercial use made from grapes growing in trees. So you're going to explain the whole process of that. So that's what a general statement is going to show. Let's take a look at this example where the general statement shows that Task-1 Public Library's interior structure changed to a large extent after its renovations. So what you're saying here is that after the renovation, Task-1 Public Library's interior changed to a large extent. There were some major changes. So that's what you're trying to talk about, and that's what your general statement is telling the examiner. For this example, let's take a look at the general statement, which says that it takes several steps to go from cotton growing in the field to clothes you can buy and wear. Very detailed, gives you an overall idea of what you're going to talk about regarding the diagram. So now, once you have done the introduction, once you have identified the topic sentence and you have written a general statement, we move on to the body of the essay. So the body of the essay will also consist a couple of elements, and they are usage of passive voice, using sentences, using sequence words and phrases, and describing the location. So these may seem very out of context, but I'm going to explain you what each of these elements mean. So when you have planned your essay and you have made notes about details, remember, you have identified the steps in a process or the changes between two diagrams. So now you will turn those notes that you have made in the planning section and you're going to turn it into the body of your essay. So how do you do that? So a Task-1 diagram basically shows actions, but it doesn't usually show the person performing the action, which is why you must use passive voice. Because when you don't know who is performing the actions, you have to use passive voice, which is why we recommend that you should use passive voice in order to avoid any marked deduction due to grammatical mistakes. As you don't know who is performing those particular actions in those steps, you should always use passive voice. So passive voice is formed with the verb be and the past participle form of the main verb. So the verb be is commonly used to join a subject to its complement. It can be used in any verb tense. It can be used in present tense. It can be used in past tense. So in Task-1, you will generally use either present tense or past tense. And let's look at these examples. So The apples are harvested. This is in present tense because you have are. So are is the be verb which connects the subject to the complement, and harvested is the past participle of the main verb. In this example, we have the books were moved. So this is in past tense because you have were, and where is the be verb which connects the subject to the complement, and moved is the past participle of the main verb. So this is how you should be writing while writing about the details, and you should be writing in passive voice. So here we have an activity for you where you have to change these sentences into passive voice using the previous tip that I have given you. So I'll show you how to do the first one, and you will be doing the rest of the sentences. So the first one says that somebody packs the cotton in bales. So in order to write it in passive voice, you have to use the past participle of the main verb and the be verb. So packs become packed, and the somebody is not going to be here anymore. So cottons are packed in bales. So are is the be verb which connects cotton with packing, which is the subject is the cotton and packing is the complement, so it connects the subject with the complement. So cotton is packed in bales. So this is how you will be doing the rest of the sentences, and this is gonna help you as you will be very sure of how you should be using passive voice while writing Task 1. So the second element that I'm going to talk about is using sequence words and phrases. So when you write about a process diagram, you will have to write about the steps, and steps come one after another. So in order to sound very comprehensive, and in order to make your write-up sound like it's talking about a process, you have to use sequential words or phrases, basically, that shows which process comes after which one. So that's why you have to use sequence words and phrases to show the order of the steps or the processes. So here we have a couple of example words that you can use. For example, the first step or the beginning step can be described with first, or to begin with, or the first step is, so like that. The middle steps can be sequenced with words like next, then, before, after, the next step, and the last step can be connected by using words like finally, or the last step, or the final step, like that. And one thing that you must be very careful about is using before and after. So you should be very careful about this because you are going to use before with the step that comes later, and you're going to use after with the step that comes first. So for example, when you're saying before doing this, do that, that means that when you're saying before, you have to talk about the step that comes after the step that you're going to talk about. Let me show you an example. So before the raisins are put into packages, they are sorted. So packaging comes after sorting. But when you're using the word before, you're actually describing the sorting, but when you're saying before sorting, so you're going to have to say before sorting what comes. So before the raisins are put into packages, they are sorted, because first they have to be sorted and then they have to be put into packages. So which is why you have to mention the second step before the first step. So when you use the word before, you have to mention the preceding step, which is packaging, and then mention the current step. So before the raisins are put into packages, they are sorted, meaning that first the grapes are sorted and then they are packaged. And when you're using after, you have to mention the step that comes first. So the raisins are taken to the processing plant after they are dried. So it can be taken to the processing plant before, because first they have to be dried and then they have to be taken to the processing plant. So this means that first the grapes are dried and then they are taken to the processing plant, which is why we use after. So this is a short disclaimer that I'm giving you, and you should be very careful about, because in the heat of the moment or while writing in a rush, you might make these mistakes. So that's why you have to be particularly careful while using before and after sequences. So here we have another activity for you. So we have a new graph, frozen orange juice concentrate. So this example we haven't done in the previous video or this video. So this is a new graph, and this is for you guys to do. So you have to complete the essay about the diagram with the passive form of the verbs in the parentheses, using present tense and using the sequences that we have taught you. So till now the elements that I have mentioned for writing the body, which is using passive form of the verbs and using sequential words, you're gonna write the essay of this word, and the essay looks like this. So one thing that is advantageous for you guys is that you won't have to write the sequential words, as the sequential words are highlighted for you. This is for your learning, but you do have to write the passive verbs, the passive form of each of the verbs. So let me do the first one for you. For example, so this is the topic sentence. The diagram shows the steps for making, oh no, sorry, this is the general statement. So the general statement tells you what the diagram is going to talk about. So the diagram shows the steps for making frozen orange juice concentrate from fresh oranges. First, see, first. So what does first mean? The first step. So this is gonna basically tell the examiner which comes after what. So firstly, the fruit. So here it's prepared, but you need to use the passive form of the verb and in present tense, remember? So in order to use the passive form of the verb, I'm sorry for the background sound. So in order to write the passive form of the verb, you have to use the be verb and the past participle of the main verb. So prepare becomes is prepared. So first, the fruit is prepared. When the oranges are ripe, they are harvested. Then, so it's showing you the sequence, one after another. Then, they are loaded. Load becomes are loaded onto the trucks, and so on. So I'd recommend you guys pause the video and do the rest of the essay orally, or you can also write. Writing always helps you remember better, so you can also write for better understanding. So that's how you will do this activity. You can go back and forth, watch the video, watch the diagram, understand the diagram first. I'd recommend pause the video here, understand the diagram, look at each step, understand the diagram. Then you start doing it orally, or you can just do it orally without looking at the diagram as well, because all the sentences are structured. You just need to fit in the words. But when you look at the graph and you do it and you do this one, it's going to help you understand better, and you're going to be able to write more effectively during your exam. So now we come to the third element, which is describing the location of particular things. So in task 1, you might also see a pair of diagrams that shows changes to a certain place. So this is the second type of process diagram that I have talked about, where they're going to give you two snapshots, past and present, and they're going to show you, and they're going to give you snapshots of a particular place which has gone through some changes. So you'll have to be able to describe what you see in each diagram, and you have to use prepositions of places and related expressions to describe the location. So when such pictures are given about a certain place, you have to describe the location of individual features, which is why you will need to know these keywords. For example, on, in, such prepositions. Then you have to have such preposition phrases such as on the right, on the left. So these are going to explain the location of those particular features. For better understanding, let's show you an example. So here we have a picture showing a couple of things. So when you're trying to describe it, you're going to have to explain the location of each of the elements. For example, there is a bridge over the river. So you have, where is the bridge? The bridge is over the river. So you have to mention that. So this helps you imagine the location. Obviously you can see it, but the examiner needs to be able to imagine what you're seeing by just reading what you're writing. So which is why such prepositions is going to help the examiner understand the location of those elements. So there is a bridge over the river. There are some trees next to the bridge. So this is going to help you understand the location of the trees. Across the river, from the trees, there is a house. Across the river, so across the river can be from both sides. From this side to this side is across the river. From this side to this side is also across the river. But when you're saying across the river, from the trees, you know from which side to go. So across the river, from the trees, there is a house. Some flowers are growing next to the house. On the other side of the house, there is a barn. A boat is sailing on the river. So all these helps you understand the location of each of the elements. So here is another activity for you guys to do. Just like the previous one that I have done, you take a look at the diagram, you understand the diagram, and then you write sentences describing the location of particular objects. So here are a couple of objects in the diagram, such as nature center, parking lot, cars. So these are some of the objects in this diagram, and you're going to have to explain the location of each of those objects similar way to I have did in the previous example, in this example. So you're going to do it in a similar way. So you can first pause the video here, take a good look at the diagram, and then you can move to this section and pause the video here and do it orally. So this is a self-practice activity which is going to help you sharpen your brain. So a couple of takeaway points from today's video. You should spend about 12 minutes for writing task 1. The writing part should be divided into introduction and the body of the essay. The introduction must include a topic sentence and a general statement describing what you're going to be talking about the diagram. The body must include the following, which is it must be written in passive voice. It must include sequence words and phrases for diagrams which involves steps of a particular process. And it must describe the location of particular details for diagrams involving changes to a particular place with past and present forms. And you should write with incomplete sentences, complete sensible sentences with proper punctuation, grammar, as all these will be tested. So hope you found this video helpful. Do check the next video that we will be having regarding the third step of Task 1 writing, academic writing Task 1 for process diagram. So this video we have talked about the writing process. In the next video we will be talking about the revising process, which is as important as the planning process. So do stick and watch the next video for complete understanding. And it was a pleasure explaining this lecture with you guys. Hope you guys found our video helpful. If you did, please like and share this video and subscribe to our channel Lekhapora Online so that we can bring you more similar content and help you in your studying journey.